There are 3 words that, when put together, can stir the hearts of wargamers with anger. A heretical phrase that can unleash a storm of rigidity and rage. Women, Space Marines. So this totally can be true for some people in the hobby, but I'm also playing on a cliche. A few months ago, 28mag announced their summer competition, Female Space Marines, with the theme of what they would look like when they finally joined the rank of the Imperiors Astartes. And I thought to myself, you know what would make this even more heretical? More than just making a woman Space Marine? Spending over $100 in kitbashing it. Note, I'm not being purposefully wasteful on this kitbash, I'm just really bad at it. If you're not into Warhammer, which honestly I'm not either, what is the deal with this drama? In short, in Warhammer lore, there are no women Space Marines. But Space Marines, the all-male unit, are the main characters of the game and of the world. And when people question why there are no women Space Marines or consider kitbashing their own, they can be shunned or belittled by the more toxic part of the community. But why are all the Space Marines men? According to this post here, the real reason that there are no women Space Marines is that women Space Marines just didn't sell back in the 1980s when you could buy these at your local gaming store. So those stores requested the Games Workshop not send women models anymore. And so this was made canon by writing it into the lore. Today, in our far more culturally diverse world of wargaming and mini painting, the consumer market has changed and the desire for women Space Marines has increased. And while I don't play, I am heavily invested in creating a more welcoming environment in the world of miniature painting and wargaming. And if creating a women Space Marine helps push this conversation out into the open, then that's what I want to do. And before we get too far, you might be asking, what about Sisters of Battle? Well, creating a unit of all women, designed with corset armor and breastplates that lift and separate, although they are getting better, doesn't exactly make me feel welcome in this hobby. Will GW make women Space Marines? Should GW make women Space Marines? That answer is not found in this video. And I'm not the one who should be answering that question anyway. There are tons of people invested in the hobby who have their own well thought out opinions on this topic. Or you could just paint your models however you want and fuck what anyone else thinks anyway. Speaking of, let's get on to painting. First, I'm not purposefully wasting these models. Since this is my first kitbash, there was a lot more trial and error than what I would guess to be normal for kitbashing. I also didn't have a clear idea of what I wanted to do in the beginning. To start, I'm just focusing on creating the coolest Space Marine I can with the pieces I have available, which is all of the Space Marines from the Indominus box set released last year. I want to create an active pose, running into battle, gesturing towards the sky victoriously, you get the idea. I'm starting out by choosing pieces with interesting details and seeing what I can make fit together. This would be the part where many Space Marines fell needlessly to the pliers and X-Acto knife.
Hello, Cardamom. Can I help you this morning? You can stay as long as you let me work.
After a lot of trial and error, I was able to finally find pieces that fit together and created a pose and had the elements that I wanted. To create an interesting story, I'm thinking my Space Marine will be standing over a dead fallen foe. I want the corpse to look natural, so instead of assembling the model as instructed, I'm gluing it together with hot glue. No one is going to see the bottom anyway because it's going to be glued to the diorama, so do whatever works. Okay, I have both models assembled. Let's go on to the details about painting. Although I don't know much about Warhammer and I am absolutely willing to just wing it, I do want to know enough to choose factions and have the right factions facing off against each other. Since I wanted to do a gray armor, I'm going with the Space Wolves. And of course, I'm going with Chaos Space Marines for my enemy because as far as I can tell, basically everyone hates them, so I figure I can't go wrong with the Chaos Space Marines. My plan is to create a snowy scene where I can place interesting blood splatter in the snow and tell a story by creating footsteps and fights in the snow itself. With these details in mind, the Space Wolves made perfect sense for setting it in my snowy atmosphere. I'm using blue stuff, a mold making material, to create a wolf pack to go on the back of my Space Wolf. Blue stuff is freaking amazing, and everyone who commented on my video where I talked about making molds out of hot glue and telling me to use blue stuff, you were absolutely right. Thank you so much for telling me about this product. It's amazing. To make your mold, first cut your blue stuff approximately to size. It's okay to guess as blue stuff can be reused over and over. Then, heat up some water till it's steaming and then place your blue stuff in it for 1 minute. After your minute, mold it onto your subject you want to recreate and let it harden for 5 minutes. Remove your element and then pack it with green stuff or your substance of choice. I'm doing this really roughly, and it probably would have made more sense to do a 2-part mold for this wolf, but since I only need the top half, I'm not too worried about losing any details that I might miss on the bottom. To create the fur cape, I'm hollowing out the green stuff version of my wolf until it becomes flexible. The smarter way to do this would have been to put something into this mold on top of the green stuff when the green stuff was still wet. That then would have forced the green stuff back out of the mold, and I would have been able to get a head start on the hollowness, but I was just so excited to use blue stuff that I didn't really think it through the whole way. Next, I'm adding gaudy spikes and bits to my Chaos Space Marine. I'm cutting horns off of a skull, adding chains, gluing on a few other bits and bobs, and then it's on to painting. I'm starting by zenithal highlighting both suits of armor, though this is really more out of habit than actual need. For the armor of the Space Wolf, I'm doing a bluish gray-green, and for the Chaos Marine, I'm doing purple. I wanted to use more interesting colors than the stereotypical gray and black that each army is depicted in. With my base coats applied with my airbrush, let's go on to painting by hand. I'm placing in my highlights and shadows roughly, not worrying about blending my colors together. Although, since wet blending is my favorite, I am doing that where I can. But I'm mostly interested in creating a sense of volume and the stark contrast I'm looking for. These are my first Space Marines, so I'm looking heavily at the Space Marine hashtag on Instagram as I work to get the general feel for how this armor is painted. It's sort of anime, but not quite anime, so it definitely is taking me a little bit longer to get used to painting it. Now I'm working on the other details of the armor. I'm painting the fabric of my Space Wolf with a very desaturated red to keep it with the muted atmosphere I am creating. Then I'm highlighting it with hatch marks to make it appear rough and worn. For the gold on each Space Marine, I'm choosing to go with a more muted gold than what one would probably normally depict on a Space Marine. I'm figuring that since each faction's armor is probably made in different locations, though I could totally be wrong because I really don't know what I'm talking about, I'm assuming that the gold can be different colors, and that is going to make them feel more separate than if I use the same gold on both armors. For my Space Wolf, I'm using a more greenish gold to help keep it cool and really intensify it into that armor. And then with my Chaos Space Marine, I'm using a more desaturated reddish hue, which will help solidify it with the red that Chaos Space Marines are known for. Each gold is highlighted and shaded, and I'm using pure white at the corners and utmost pinnacles of each element to make them appear as if they catch the light above. Next, I'm doing lining and edge highlighting. I always feel like this step really pulls my models together. I'm doing the edge highlighting on my Space Wolf with pure white, and for my Chaos Space Marine, I'm using varying shades of purple. So, I had planned on the snow being a really important part of this diorama, and therefore pretty important in the video as well. However, the snow was a nightmare. I wanted it to look trampled on and rough and tell this story, and it just did not work out that way. So the snow is okay. It's not great. But let's quickly skim what I did. My first thought was to use baking soda with ripple texture. Ripple texture is this medium that dries clear and looks like ripples or waves on water. Ripple texture and baking soda solidifies. My baking soda and PVA glue turned yellow. Battle snow and PVA glue, yellow and unrealistic in texture. Using ripple texture to hide my uneven texture. Ripple texture did not dry because I added in white paint to color it, and so it just melted. So finally, I just took a mixture of baking soda and my battle snow and sprinkled it on top of the water texture and eventually ended up with something decent. Finally, I'm doing the final details. I'm mixing my baking soda and battle snow into a matte medium and placing it onto the feet and capes of my model where snow would transfer over. Then I'm creating a pool of blood using blood for the blood god from Citadel on a toothpick to cause it to pool more naturally. Using a brush and stamping it on would not cause a realistic pool. Next, I'm placing my blood for the blood god on a toothbrush and blowing it off with an airbrush. This creates a finer spray pattern than, say, flicking it off with a toothbrush and your finger. Nearing completion, I'm looking over the model as a whole and adding anything I missed. Shadows under my models, some more highlights to draw the eye where I want, etc. Overall, I'm pretty happy with how it went. It's not quite as epic as I had originally planned, but it was my first kit bash. And I learned that kitbashing is way harder than I anticipated. But it's really exciting to interact with this community a bit more, even if it's a bit heretical. And I'm also really excited to participate in this competition and make the hobby more open and welcoming to everyone. So let me know down in the comments below. Do you think that GW should and will they create women Space Marines? If you like what I do, you know the drill. Comment, like, subscribe, email this to a friend, share it on Reddit. You can follow me on Instagram. I love to hear from you. And best of all, you can support me on Patreon, where you can join my growing community, get access to behind the scenes footage, and join my Discord, and join me on every other Sunday paint session / live stream / hobby hangouts. Basically, if you want access to me, Patreon is where you go. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope that it was helpful or something to you. Thanks so much, and I'll see you on the next one.